This is Jessica.
And this is Kelly. And this is the Chasing Brighter
podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast and our series, Staying Healthy and Happy During the Holidays. Today, we want to address relationships. We have my friend and colleague, Orly Katz, who is a relationship counselor with us today. And she's going to be helping us and talking with us about how we can stay connected and any tips and tools that we might need that will help us with our partners this holiday season. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
You know, I always like to start a little bit at the beginning. So we would just love to hear how you got into this profession. I know that you are a certified level 3 Gottman counselor, and which is just so impressive. But how did you start this journey of becoming a therapist?
Oh, it's a long story that spans over 4 decades. So I started my professional career actually as a midwife. And I worked as a midwife for several years, 8 years maybe. And then in Israel, I was born and raised in Israel. And we came to the United States to advance our education, because back then there was no master's or doctorate in nursing. Mm-hmm. So I did my master's or graduate here. Studies here in nursing, and started working as a labor and delivery room nurse in Maryland. And after 15 years or so, I switched to home health and became an advice nurse for postpartum women.
Okay.
So I did my lactation, and I realized that there is a high percentage of postpartum depression. At the time, it was about 26%.
Wow.
So I went back to school to become a counselor, so I can work with postpartum women and be more skilled in it. So I started working with postpartum women, new mothers, and it led me to working with the fathers as well.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, if I'm a counselor, if I see the need for the fathers, and I see the need to kind of like unite them and bring them back together, started looking, and I took Gottman. The other program that I took with Gottman is Bringing Baby Home. It's a program where transition to parenthood. So that brought me to couples counseling, relationship counseling. Yeah, I'm still an active nurse, but I don't work necessarily as a nurse hands-on. I do more of education as a nurse.
Okay. Yeah. And I do want to say, because I know that we're in the know, Orly and I are, but the Gottman method is an approach to couples therapy that includes a thorough assessment of the couple's relationship and integrates research-based interventions. And the goals of the Gottman method couples therapy increase intimacy, respect, and affection, remove barriers that create a feeling of stagnancy, and create a heightened sense of empathy and understanding. And it's really heavily research-based. And I know I've utilized it as well. It's a really effective tool in interacting with couples. But I'm curious as well, because I would think that being a midwife in Israel would be totally different than labor and delivery in the States. Did you find that to be a big difference, or was it just the same?
It was, in a way, it was very similar, because you spend intimate time with the couple. Mm-hmm. The difference was that in Israel, the midwifery follows the British approach. So they are only in the hospital. And so I was in the hospital with the women that came. And so I spent one-on-one time with them, with a couple. Mm-hmm. And it is very similar to the States, where you have the primary care nurse. that spends one-on-one. I just didn't attend the delivery. Oh, I didn't deliver the babies.
Yeah.
But as far as spending time, intimate time, so I found this to be even more rewarding because I didn't need to take care of the delivery, and I was just there for the mother and the baby, or the parents and the baby. Yeah. I liked it even more. That's why I didn't go to midwifery when I came here.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's like you see a need and fill a need. It was like, oh, these women, right, I could help them even more if I could understand more about the psychology behind postpartum depression.
Right. And then it led me to the fathers as well, and the couples.
So do you also think so? It's great talking to you. I'm glad you've been able to come on the podcast. So thank you for taking the time. My husband Brian and I have been married for 16 years, and I realize my kids are at an age where one is getting ready to go into high school, and I'm in an interesting spot because I do feel like my circle of friends in general, marriage is hard, and it gets hard at different stages. So, we're definitely, we have our own challenges at our stage now. And I'm thinking about when you talked about couples when they first had babies. So like, I would argue in some way, some of the challenges that we have now in our marriage were actually rooted in that first big challenge we had, right? Which was having a baby. And then for a lot of couples, maybe that doesn't seem like it's a problem at the time. And then it's like, now it's like a decade plus later, and it's like this difficult thing that we all have these entrenched things. So how does it help in that point of like coming into having a baby? Now you have a person in your life that you don't have any control over as much as you did just as a husband and wife. Like, talk to us kind of about that.
Well, a lot of this is understanding each other's needs. Okay. And looking at each other and thinking, what can I do to help them? It's a lot about communication. Mm-hmm. So understanding yourself, understanding your needs is primary, because many people do not know their needs. And then understanding your partner's needs, that is important. And then communicate. These are my needs. These are your needs. This is my perspective. This is your perspective. How do we bridge between those two perspectives? And that is a skill. And that is an acquired skill, because not many people can actually do it. And if you don't learn how this skill to communicate in that manner, there is a resentment that is built up. So I could see 10, 20 years after having the kids, I can see the resentment. I can see, and then we need to untangle it and then start from the beginning. And it's very hard to untangle, and it's very easy to fall back into that well-worn path for me. It takes practice. It takes practice. And that's why we promoted the Bringing Baby Home, which is a problem for expecting parents. So that when they have the baby, they will be able to, again, understand each other and communicate. It takes practice. Mm-hmm. Sure, if it is, there is a resentment, we need to work with the resentment first, before we deal with the communication and the understanding. We need to understand the nature of the resentment. Yeah, and I think it starts so much from people I know when they have that first kid. So I think that's super interesting. And I think it's also because you don't have to, I think, you're with somebody and you are developing a relationship, and then having that new challenge, I don't know, it just makes it hard, and it's hard to change as we go later on as well. How is it different then for, you're talking about couples who are like in the young, or like one, like before they have a child or when they have a child, versus the couples that you see who have, decades, let's say, of like,
in a relationship that now they've got to kind of untangle, like you said, those challenges.
The new parents have been together for a while, but not enough to develop a pattern. And it is much easier to help them develop a pattern of understanding each other and accepting each other, not necessarily agreeing, but accepting. With older couples, there is a baggage, there is a pattern, and the pattern is a challenge. This is something, it's a habit, it's a challenge that you need to work with, but there is also a resentment. While with the new parents, there is less resentment. So once they have less resentment, they are more tolerant, they are more patient. The challenge with new parents is lack of sleep. When parents do not sleep well, we know that research showed that a month later, interrupted sleep, people become clinically depressed, show significant symptoms of depression. So that is the challenge there. So, for example, if they work sleep patterns, who will sleep where when taking shifts, and we have some tools for that. Then we kind of we don't take it away completely, but we do it about 75%. Whereas people will sleep better. So if someone slept 8 hours, that's their time, they will sleep 6 hours. They will sleep 7 hours, but not uninterrupted, as much as they can, of course. And we have tools for that. So we minimize the sleep. We work with understanding, accepting, and it is much more, they are still excited, they are still, everything is still new, so it is easier to build a habit right there, rather than a couple with kids and everyday life and worries and finances and all of that. And this is why we promote before having the baby, all of that.
I love that. I still think that's incredibly rare, right? All of the books and media and, are all about caring for the baby. And there was nothing, no one ever pulled me aside and said, oh, this is how you can help your relationship. This is how you can stay connected with your partner when this little human comes in. I remember one time watching on one of the morning shows, and they said the first year of the baby's life is the hardest in the couple because a baby cannot prioritize their needs and they can't meet any of their own needs. So the baby is very demanding, and you have to meet all of their needs. And so it's very intense on a couple, which helped me a little bit. But it definitely threw us for a loop. We were married 7 years together, 9 before we had our first. And, I think I was like, we've been together so long, we can do this. And it was definitely a huge transition for us.
So one aspect is the sleep, right? Mm-hmm. The other one is decision making. Who will make the decision and what will they do? So I had couples that they had arguments over the baby had a fever. So what are we going to do now? So one is doing research because that's their stress mode. When they are stressed out, they go online and they look for information. The other one is let me consult with the expert. Let me call the pediatrician. And they had argument. Whose way will go first? That is something that you cannot really predict every step. But overall, if you kind of not necessarily assign roles, but if you have an understanding who will take over when, that will be very helpful. Because the decision making is kind of will pave the way for the future. Who will take care of the health? Who will take care of the daycare? Who will take care of the other household needs? Mm-hmm. That can be discussed and can be acquired. But I really think it needs more like more of a discussion.
Like roles and responsibilities in some way, because in some ways, that's what I would say with my own friend. I'll just say friends over the years, where I think you have kids, and then the mom who was already working full time, maybe was already taking on a lot of the household responsibilities, now takes on the baby, and so that resentment, it seems pretty common. Right. To me, that then the woman ends up getting resentful of their partner. Now, it's not always the case. Maybe it's the opposite, but it's like having, to your point, Orly, about like sharing responsibilities in some way, or having some sort of an agreement on how that is going to change. And maybe they do spend a lot of time doing that in the marriage piece when they get married. Like we had to go to pre-Cana for Catholic. If you're a Catholic, you would have to do like a marriage thing. And in that you talk about those things, but you really don't, to your point, Jessie, you really don't talk about that. I'm like, okay, by the way, you're adding a baby onto the mix, right? And there are other obligations, and nobody says who's going to take care of that.
Decisions primarily.
Yeah.
There is one thing about women and responsibilities. It depends on what. Usually what I hear from women is the cooking and cleaning and laundry and taking care of the kids. But I don't usually hear about who is taking care of the cars, who is taking care of the finances, the billing, the bills, the investments, and all of the other things that need to be taken care of. So when we divide chores, when we agree on different chores, different responsibilities, budget. When we talk about responsibilities, we do need to look at both of them and see what each one of them is doing. Yeah, that's important to talk about bills and finances in cars, for example.
Well, and it gains a perspective, right? Because it's that internal narrative of like, I'm doing everything, versus when you really start to look in the details, maybe there is more of a share happening than it seems.
It's a little bit different because one is doing every day.
Yes.
On a daily basis, every day, all the time. The other one is doing once a month here, fixing this here. But it does take a lot of energy and time to fix something that is broken, for example, in the house. Calling for estimates, be there. There are so many other things that we don't necessarily talk about. We talk about the regular daily activities that we do. So I think both can come together and again talk about it. Here is what I'm doing. Here is what I'm doing. Also, recognition and appreciation. That's another big part of it. Do we appreciate our partners, not as women necessarily, but do we appreciate our partners' involvement?
I think that needs to be, or I think it's healthy to update that information, right? So maybe for 5 years, you're doing the cooking and cleaning, but then that needs to be changed too. And I think when we're able to communicate and update that too, and not just, oh, this is my role for the next 50 years.
I so agree with you. I call it reevaluation.
Yeah.
Because I see the need to reevaluate. I see the need to change. I see the need to talk about it. I usually suggest to have something that is called family business meeting.
Yeah.
And in the family business meeting, which is once a week, you evaluate how you're doing, how do you feel, what needs to be done, and you share the feelings, you share plans, you share activities. So I think it promotes understanding of each other, and I think it promotes recognition as well on a weekly basis. And
Absolutely.
then you can say, well, I'm tired of cooking. Let's share. I'm tired of doing this. Let's reevaluate. And I'm not necessarily saying I had couples that reevaluated and sent their laundry out because they just couldn't handle it with several kids. Okay. So it wasn't anyone's responsibility anymore, but they discussed it and they said, okay, you know what, we'll pay more, but we'll take the load off. Okay. I had couples that hired a chef, a cook.
Yeah.
Once in a while brought in some food and okay.
Yeah, it's exploring how you can maybe take some of that off your plate or outsource it. Or I encourage so many people, not necessarily even in couple sessions, but I see, mostly women of like your children doing some things. My kids were in Montessori school and then the Montessori method, right? They're folding clothes and shining shoes and things in preschool. And at a very young age, children can do a lot of stuff. I had a really good friend and she said in the classroom, I think her son was 7 or 8, and they said, how many of you can make your own sandwich? And her son was the only one in the class that had never done anything for himself. And so I think that too, right? Not just our partner, but as our children get older, it's like, we don't have to do everything and take on all the things. We have these little humans that can do it too.
And they can do a lot through fun and games. They can pick up their toys before they go to sleep. There's so many things that they can do.
Yeah.
But the key point is to talk about it and to express it, not in an accusatory way, but for your partner to understand where you're coming from, and for you to understand where your partner is coming from. Then you can look at different options. I just brought up one option, you brought another option. And then we do the pros and cons of every option, and we see which one works for us the best. A few months later, or whatever it is, you reevaluate and you say, well, it worked for us then. Prices went up. We cannot afford it anymore. Okay, let's go back to drawing board. Let's decide again.
Yeah.
And so I do believe in reevaluations and changing, reevaluating and changing and expressing your needs. But it takes awareness to understand what your needs are. Mm-hmm. And then it takes good communication skills to express it in a non-accusatory way.
Yeah.
The sooner you develop those, or you acquire those, the better, of course.
And then, as we move forward in a relationship, and then we've got years of these patterns where maybe there is some resentment, then there's, disconnection, right? And mm-hmm. A couple isn't feeling connected. What, in your expert opinion, are strategies that couples can use to help increase connection?
Spend time, schedule time. Spend time, no phones, no after the kids go to school, to bed. Schedule time to just be together. Now, of course, it develops. You cannot just talk every day for a half hour or an hour, but you develop some common or shared interests. So couples learn language, couples learn on new instruments, couples do all kinds of different things. But if they do it more consistently, and I think consistency is the key word here, to be together. So if you do something together with your partner, something that both are interested in, that connects you. The other thing is what Gottman calls creating a culture of appreciation, where you recognize, you are aware, you are alert, you are aware of your partner's contributions or good or positive positive contributions. It can be appearance, it can be activities, it can be whatever it is. But if you're not aware of this, and if you are aware of yours only, then you're missing out on a lot. So I think creating this culture of appreciation is from the beginning, to be aware of what is going on and to recognize, and for your partner to know that you have his or her back, for your partner to appreciate you, reciprocate as well. And that is something that's a milestone that you have to accomplish from the beginning of being together, actually, not necessarily marriage. So creating this culture of appreciation is a prime thing to do.
You know, if I tell my husband, thanks for taking the kids to school today, it sometimes doesn't, I don't feel genuine with how I say it. So it's sort of like, how do you get yourself into a pattern of saying things and making it truly feel genuine instead of just saying it to just be like, I'm grateful that he's doing that. And if I'm like, hey, thanks for it, just doesn't, I don't do that enough to make it feel natural. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Should be more specific, because after a while, thanking for the same thing becomes empty compliment or acknowledgement. So I'm not saying. So let's take this as an example. There is one day where everyone is very upset, and kids are rushing and upset and whatever it is. And your husband is calm through this storm and takes them to school, and everything comes down. And so this is something to be aware of. So it's not only thank you for taking the kids to school, it is thank you for being calm and composed and creating this calm environment. So the kids went to school there. They were way more calmer than before. So being more specific. I had many couples actually that said to each other, "Oh, you are a wonderful mother." Well, that didn't do much. She knows she's a wonderful mother, but when he said, when I saw you with the kids today, it was wonderful to see. It was just so you were so kind and give more examples like this. So it is way more specific. So I'm not saying to say everything about every day about taking kids to school, but overall, if you notice those things, your partner will be you'll feel your partner will feel that you have their back, right?
I think and what I'm hearing you say is just being very specific and having that person feel unique, because any warm body can take the kids to school. At least that's because I would be one that, right. I'm the one that's like, if you tell me, thanks for taking this to school, or, whatever, that wouldn't do anything for me. Like you're saying, but I see you and you're unique. And this is what I saw specifically for you, versus like completing a task that anybody could do.
Yes, anyone. Okay. Exactly. It also shows that you are actually looking at your partner. So you're paying attention, and that means that you care. So people usually reciprocate when they see that someone cares about them, cares to look at them.
Yeah. Yeah. And this time of year, right, starting, end of September, October, we start having all of these things, various holiday celebrations. The schools are having, we have teacher conferences and award ceremonies, and they're off school and on school. And so, for those couples who are like, we don't have time. I'm tired. I fall asleep with the kids. How can they, what are some strategies for them to schedule that time?
Usually people can find this half hour where they can be, even if the kids play in the living room and they talk quietly in the kitchen. They don't have to have like privacy, and doesn't need necessarily to be a huge thing, but this half hour, or walking, for example, walking after dinner. So I'm not saying, again, if you have kids and you cannot, of course not, but you can make it like a family event. You can always find this private moment where you can talk. My husband and I had, throughout our years, we've been together for almost 50 years. We always have either a couch or two recliners in our bedroom. Small as can be, but we have a quiet place for us.
Yeah.
So the kids, where we went the kids went to sleep, and my kids are in their 40s now, so it is not like, of course not. But we have the house for ourselves now. But we always had these 15 minutes or half hour to talk about the day, to talk about the feelings, to talk about not necessarily resentment and not necessarily air grievances right there before we go to sleep, but just to connect. Just for our part, for each one to know what is going on with the other one.
Yeah. I always like to, like a little thing, I know we're not in the same room, but I always like when my husband calls me during the day, and, we have 3 kids. It's crazy, and logistics. And he'll call and say, "Oh, I was just calling to see how your day was going." And those, if, those little things, even if it's like, we can't get together, at least like, we can carve out, a little conversation, right?
Yeah. That is another wonderful way to connect. Texting
I don't like
can be tricky because I'm very much against connecting via text, unless it is logistics and tasks and things like that. But once in a while, you can insert there an emoji or whatever your language is. So people do like it. So throughout the day, also, but there are times when you really cannot, in traveling or different professions, or sometimes cannot. But I think that at the end of the day, 15 minutes, half hour are so important. And if you can do it way before you're tired, I mean, you're tired all the time, but after dinner or whenever the kids are doing something in the living room and you are in the kitchen or somewhere where you can just talk quietly.
Yeah. I think too, I'm so excited. I want to mention these, but I'm so excited early you have your daily questions, your card deck, and what the cards. And one of the things I think that's really cool is kind of a little bit like what you're saying, Kelly. It's like when I'm having a really hard time thinking of something nice to say to my partner, or if things are really tense, it's like you can take away that just by a question a day, right? To me, if you sat and asked a question a day to your partner, that would create a ritual of connection, I would think.
Absolutely. I tested it on my husband, and he was my pretty critical, actually, before the final design. Those are to promote positivity. Because each question here, so first of all, it is not for distressed couples.
Okay.
Because, but each question here is designed to promote positivity and showing care. Yeah. So, for example, what would make you feel proud? What would make you feel proud today? And this is a question for the morning. Yeah. Or what made you feel proud today in the evening? These are questions that promote awareness, vulnerability, right? Because they need to really express. It's not accusatory. It is not, there is nothing negative there. But they can say nothing. Nothing made me proud today. You can go to the other question, but there is no accusation, no negativity, and really to show that you care. There is a question here, for example, which is a reflection question. What is our legacy? And that is, it's not for the morning, for the evening. This is like for the family business meeting. What is our legacy? And something to think about.
Yeah.
So I have here questions for about us. What did we do together today that helped someone else? That promotes connection. We are a unit, right? We are a unit. We are connected. What did we do today as a couple, as a family, for someone else?
Yeah.
That's kind of like on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And then I have questions for the mornings, and then questions for the evenings, and reflections. And the reflections are a little bit more involved and requires more thinking. What values do we share that unite us and make us a couple, for example? That is uniquely to you as a couple, right?
Yeah.
So it promotes positivity. I had couples that bought other cards, and they read me the card, and I was horrified. Have you ever thought about leaving me?
Oh.
Really?
Oh.
That is so negative.
Right.
Them if you do, them if you don't. So
yes.
Yeah. So these are, like you were saying, made for positive connection, and there's not some tricks in there, right? Or questions that could trip you or your partner up, but just to have you reflect on yourself, your day, and looking. I like the ones about us. About looking at like not just you as an individual or you as a family, but you as a couple, and promoting that connection.
And also to be the other thing is, which connection is one, and also to be able to express your needs. Yeah. So there is a question here: what can make today the best day of the week?
Yeah.
So you think about your needs. What will make it for you, right? What will make it a good day or the best day of the week for you?
Yeah.
So you tell your partner, and your partner is hopefully aware of this and really takes it in. So in the evening or at the end of the week, again, I promote the family business meeting. So what was it? What made this day the best day of the week? And it shows caring, it shows that you're aware, it shows recognition, and it allows you to ask follow-up questions, come up with follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And so it starts a discussion. I use it for individuals as well, a little bit differently, of course. What would make you feel proud today? That's a question that can go for individuals as well. So as a therapist, I use it for individuals. But for couples, they can use it on their own. And in general,
I was just going to say, such a simple tool, right? Such a simple thing to do that takes seconds or minutes, but with such a positive impact.
Yes, it is. And I stress again, it is not for couples in distress, because if someone says, what would make you feel proud today? And the couple is in crisis mode, that will not necessarily go well.
Yeah.
But the intention is for the couple to come up with positive answers and reciprocate and develop a discussion.
Yeah.
I think that's great too, because sometimes you get to the point where even at the end of the day, you're catching up with your spouse and you're saying, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. How was yours? Oh, it was fine. Right. And then you go about your business and there really isn't a lot of connection there, right? At that time, instead of like figuring out ways to dive in deeper. I'm definitely one of the people that have a hard time being vulnerable and really kind of sharing that. And I just don't know how to express those things as well. So I think these cards really help facilitate, and think of ways to talk about something that you may not think about how to express yourself.
I think it also creates a conducive environment for that. Because if your partner asks you, what about your husband asks you about your feelings? Okay. Really, it is not clear, but what made you proud today? Or there are many questions here. If you had an unexpected day off today, how would you enjoy it? For example, that's it talks to your vulnerability, to your needs. So it creates this conducive environment for that to be vulnerable, to share.
And when it is really intense, when a couple is in crisis, I mean, what you recommend, just seeking counseling?
I think so. And the counselor is a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
As a facilitator, I show them that I believe each one of them, and I understand I'm trying to understand each one of them. So it is not, so I am objective, right? I'm kind of like the facilitator, the objective facilitator. So they can tell me whatever, and I will believe them, and I will say, yes, you. I'm not saying that they are right, but I will say I believe you because this is your truth. And I'm showing the couple how to listen to each other and understand each other, not necessarily to agree, but to understand where each other is coming from. And I think that is important, because if you understand where your partner is coming from, that it is much easier to negotiate, to disagree in a different way, in a non-accusatory way.
Yeah.
So as a facilitator, that is my job. And I think couples in distress need this third party that will be objective. Now, I'm trying my best to be objective. And this is something that I am working on every day, every session, because I think it is so important to show them that they are heard. And their issue, their stress is real. We say non-judgmental way. But being objective, I think, is far more important than anything else. And to be objective, they cannot get it with their support system, because their support system kind of like reinforces their misery. They give them advice. They give them everything is for that person, not necessarily for the couple.
Yeah.
Imagine if your friend is telling you, well, your husband or your partner, I try to understand their point. Might not go so well. But if they tell you, absolutely, you are right, this is what you want to hear, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is room, and there is a need for support system, friends and family, but there is also room for someone who is more objective.
Yeah. So when a couple is looking at exploring the options in terms of like getting a counselor, having that objective person involved, what is some advice that you would have for them in terms of finding the right fit in terms of a counselor that can help them?
I think that reading the bio is important.
Okay.
Because then right away. I'm Jewish, and so naturally, people that are Jewish are more attracted, right, to a Jewish, because I understand the culture. I'm from Israel. I'm Israeli, so Israelis are more attracted because of the language, because of the culture, many reasons. But if you don't know, that is one thing. The other thing is look at advanced theories or skills that they have. I think it is very important to have a framework and to have the theory behind it. Because everyone can be couples counselor. Everyone can be can do trauma. Everyone can do. The question is how advanced you are and how
like with certifications, special trainings,
special training.
Kind of
yes.
Stuff. Yeah.
I don't do, for example, when I work with individuals, I don't do trauma. Well, I learned some in school, but I'm not a specialist. And so I will not take it on myself. I will not take eating disorders. I will not take trauma when I work with individuals.
For a specialty, that's kind of their specialty, right?
And also years of experience. Because you start off, so let's say we start with a program and we know the theory. It's like a new driver. Yeah, you know the theory, you know how to utilize things, but you don't have enough experience. I mean, it's the chicken and the egg, actually. You don't have enough experience to draw from. So you learn the theory, great. But how many, not necessarily years, and I think you get the feel about the experience because the counselor brings you examples, and confidential, of course, and I usually mix genders and ages and whatever situations. That, of course, because you want to know, you want to know that your counselor has experience with this, and I think that is important.
Do you
These
find
questions to ask?
What about, do you find that like, do they interview? Do you find that they will interview or have like introduction, or what sort of, I guess I'm even heading down the path of like what advice do we have for people who who are married, maybe have some challenges and maybe could benefit from a counselor, and like, so picking somebody, and then do you would recommend that they would interview to like narrow down, or okay?
Absolutely, at least 15 minutes. The other thing is, which is chemistry, simple chemistry. The counselor can be great, experienced, specialized in different different specialties, whatever it is, but there is no chemistry. So if there is no chemistry, it really doesn't. I recommend interviewing. I recommend not by phone. I recommend online now.
Okay.
Because you want to see facial expression, for example. The counselor might not be judgmental or not show you, but not on the phone, for example. But the facial expression can be very judgmental to you. So there is no chemistry.
Yeah.
So even though there is no judgment per se, but the facial expression is so important, right? So I think on both sides, I think the counselor as well. So I did in my private practice. I gave it at least 15 minutes of free consultations just to see if we are a good match.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, right? And I think right now, my husband and I's experience when we had a counselor was there's such a demand too, that it really was like you're deciding who's the right pick for you. There, you as a counselor are seeing if that's the right couple, the right fit for you at the same time. It's sort of like a job interview on both sides, more so. I mean, have you seen that too as well? Like just because of the way things have maybe changed and there is a high demand, and maybe also there's just a heightened awareness of mental health being something that everyone needs to take care of.
I've had it all along.
Okay.
There are couples that I just couldn't see myself working with them. With one of them or with both, and there was such a resentment and reluctancy, for example, to work with a counselor or whatever it was. And it was easy to say, I don't feel it. I don't think we are a good match. Let me give you another name. And that is okay. We are not into the sessions, and they're not spending money and whatever. And then we say, oh, sorry, it doesn't work for me. But definitely as a counselor, I'm a human being, and definitely I have personal connection professional connection with my clients, and I really need to be able to work with them. So it works on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read that the best indicator for positive outcomes or therapy is the relationship between the therapist and the client. And so I think exactly that's why a consultation would be so critical, because if you're not connecting, the chances of good outcomes are pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is, there are many ways to do couples counseling on your own. Research from Rochester University showed that couples that have been married for like 3 years, if they watch a relationship movie and answer questions, that improves their relationship. Free counseling, right? Good, and it proved to be working. So it's really good. I think there are 11 questions or something or more. I don't know. I developed like 5 questions, and because they're doing counseling on their own, and it works. There is research showed that it does. I think it is still going on.
And I think too, sometimes I'll tell people, sometimes there was just a training on it, but sometimes you're kind of doing couples counseling, but with the individual, right? Sometimes a little bit. And, but it's like if a partner, whatever, isn't interested in counseling, there's so much ways to gather information now too, right? Like you're saying, get the card decks. Gottman has how many books, right? Tons and tons of books.
And YouTube clips.
Yeah,
hundreds of them.
Watch Gottman on YouTube. Read a Gottman book. The Sound House. What is it? I don't know all the time. I know there's like 7 principles 12. Of it.
About 12.
Yeah, and then listen to podcasts. Look online. Read articles. There's so many ways. Especially now, I know that it's difficult. There's a really high demand for therapy. And if you're having a hard time getting in, there are some things you can do at home and together. Like you said, if you're not in crisis, there are things that you can do.
If you're not in crisis, then you're more tolerant and you can initiate. It will not be skewed like one will initiate and do all the work and the other one will just tag along. If they're not in a crisis mode. If they're in a crisis mode, I highly suggest to go to a couples counselor. But if you're not in a crisis mode, and you can say, well, you know what, this week will be my turn to come up with some activities that are related to our relationship. Maybe next week your partner will take over. But it is important to have maybe not 50-50, but it is important for both to initiate. Because that means that both are both want to, and both need to, both are aware of the need. Not one and the other one is okay. That builds even more resentment, right? Because you're doing so much for your partner, and your partner, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You gave us so many tips and strategies. I know I'm already writing all the blog posts. I know Kelly too. It's like we want to also have something separate just for finding a good counselor for you, what you can do. I love the bringing baby home. I wish I would have
oh my gosh,
had that.
I have a couple of friends who are pregnant now with their first.
Right.
So
send them to this bringing baby home. I think it is online now.
Okay.
I'm not doing it anymore. I used to do it in the office. I haven't done it in a while, but I think it is online. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
They also, I'm promoting Gottman now, but there is a store where you can buy the program.
Okay.
I think back then it was a DVD and a book and cards. So I think you can still buy something. I don't know. You can still buy it.
And I think one of the top tips today for anyone listening, have a once a week family business meeting, have a time to check in, look at the week. And I think when you're able to do that, like you've been talking about, is then we can be able to verbalize our needs, right? Our partner can't read our mind. And if we don't know what our needs are, we can't verbalize them. I think creating that ritual of meeting weekly, is invaluable for couples.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I think it is important.
Orly, thank you so much for taking time on your day to talk with us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
We're going to get to work. I'm going to get to work with those cards too. I'm excited to start using those. I just got them.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and joining us today.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Chasing Brighter or on our blog, chasingbrighter.com.